Hello all, and welcome back to my channel, Red Femme Diaries. Alright y'all, so this particular video is, for me personally, is one of the most important videos I think I'll probably ever do. No fancy clips or anything like that. The video that I had wanted to do before this one, I wanted to talk about the chips being implanted and in the hands of people. It's already going on in Sweden and Wisconsin and other parts of the world. It's already here, and I wanted to compare that to Revelation. A lot of people talk about there being a mark in the forehead or the hand where, it can prevent you from buying and selling. And so I was gonna kind of do a Bible study, not really much of a Bible study, but just kind of compare and see are these things related. But so that takes some time. That means I got to do a lot of research and Bible study to make sure I present something decent to you. But in the meantime, in between time, I had a really incredible experience this weekend, and it's just important to me that I share it with you all. With most of my videos, I pretty much just record when I feel the urge, like this video, if I don't do this video, then I won't be able to go to sleep. So this video is this is really a huge one for my sons, but this is also for anyone who cares to hear this. It's my testimony of how I first discovered God, not necessarily Christ yet, but how I first discovered God and how I'm intertwining that with my, pending, I don't want to say that, the D word, but what's to be for me and everybody else. So anyway, I just wanted to talk freely, and hopefully somebody, even if it's just one person, might hear my testimony, and maybe it might help you open your mind to the idea of God. I have atheist friends out there, and agnostic and Christians and things like that, and subscribers and things like that. So this is just my story. Maybe you'll get something from it, maybe or not. But to my boys, this is your mommy's story. Okay. So this past weekend, as you guys know, the doctors have given me about 3 to 6 months, possibly 9, he said. That's what the doctor says. Who knows? I'm taking high dose vitamin C and other things. Who knows? I don't know, and neither do they. But I will say this. I have been battling this disease, I think, for the last 3 years now. And so I do not do chemo or radiation or any of those things. So this has been, when I tell you, the battle of my life, not just for my health, but my sanity. It's when you are faced with your mortality, and each and every one of you really need to deal with it now. It's best to do it now, but at some point you're going to have to go through what I'm going through. I've just been given more time to really sort through all these things, because our God is good, so he knows that I need a little bit more time to figure this out. So I'm knowing about my demise way before it's going to happen. You know what I mean? So he's giving me time to sort through all these things. But as many of you know, I still currently am sort of a Seventh-day Adventist, but I have not attended church services in over a year, pretty much since COVID, because I have some issues with the church. I'll make it brief. Well, let's just go into my testimony. Okay, let's just go into that, and we're just going to do it chronologically. So, I didn't grow up necessarily in the church, but we did go to church sometimes. We went to St. John's Baptist Church. Remember, that was in Long Beach. And we didn't go all the time, but I remember we had to get dressed up in Easter dresses and, Easter baskets and things like that. And we went sometimes, but not all the time. So I can't say I necessarily grew up Christian, because we weren't listening to Christian music all the time. We weren't constantly in Bible study, none of those things. But I did say my Easter speech. Anyway, fast forward to when I was about in my early 20s. I just never really considered God. I figured that there was some sort of higher power, so I would have considered myself agnostic, but definitely didn't have any sort of religious affiliation. Here's what happened. So the way I grew up, pretty much by the time I was 18, all of us girls, we were out by the time we were 18. I was no different, but I went out there completely unprepared, and I ended up having to come back home. I went to nursing school because all I knew was either be a nurse or a teacher. I didn't know any different. So I went the nursing route. Come to find out, I don't like nursing. My parents then sold the condo that they were living in that I had moved back to. They didn't give me any notice. So in a month's time, I had to find a place to live with no warning, no money, just dropped out of nursing school, no idea what I was going to do, but I had to figure it out. So I found an apartment in downtown Long Beach, and certain parts of downtown are nice, but back then, this is like over 20 years ago, there were certain parts that were not so nice. But I found an apartment, and they wanted $575 a month. This was it was a studio apartment. They were trying to do some revitalizing in the downtown area. People were buying income properties and trying to fix them up. So this particular property was very run down. It was built in the 1920s, and they were trying to, get out the bad folk and, bring in good folk. And so even though I didn't have, all my money and, I was kind of like desperate for a place, this woman, she met me and she liked how I was, and she said she thought that I would be a great addition to, the apartments, because I wasn't like, the other ones. So pretty much the apartment was just filled with, like prostitutes and drug dealers and, pimps and all those sorts of things. So they were trying to get those out and bring in better tenants. So she gave me an apartment. I moved in on a Sunday, went to work. I waited tables at the time. My friends at the time, they helped move me in and during the day, and I went and worked my shift, and I came back to my brand new apartment, and I turned on the lights, and when I tell you the amount of roaches, now mind you, we just kind of moved during the day and just threw all the stuff in there, so it wasn't organized at all, and then all these roaches started scattering all over the place. And this apartment was from the 1920s, and so they had hardwood floors. Sound good, right? But these were hardwood floors from the 1920s, so there were splinters all in them. So you had to wear shoes or else you're gonna get a splinter, because it's like legit like wood. But the roaches were coming up through the crevices and cracks of the wood floors, and I just panicked because I have a phobia of roaches. So that was that. And then apparently the renter that rented the apartment before me sold drugs. So his clients, not knowing that he had moved, would come and knock on my door all hours of the night, looking for him and looking for drugs. There even was a blind man one night that came knocking on my door. Now, mind you, at the time I was in my early 20s, and I weighed, like they say, $105, so I was scared to death. I remember one night coming home from work, I saw a man get robbed, and one man hit him over the head, knocked him on the ground, and started rummaging through his pockets, and I just ran. I waited tables at the time, which means I got a lot of cash tips, and I would get out real late. I worked at a place called Lucille's, and I was closed sometimes, and you'd get out so late. And by the time I got home, it was like midnight or later, and you don't want to be walking around with a pocket full of money at that time. So I had a plan. I'd, double park in front of my apartment, because it's downtown, so there's no, parking, not, readily available parking. So I double park my car, go put my tips in my apartment, and then I would get like some scissors or a knife or something like that. I was just really young at the time, so I didn't know. A scissor or a knife, and I go park my car because it's downtown, there's no parking. And I would walk, and I remember I'd have a really mean look on my face. I'd walk with my scissors, knife, whatever I had, and go straight to my apartment. And I'd go in there and deal with the roaches. Now, because this apartment was from the 1920s, the plumbing was really bad. So the water was either boiling hot or freezing cold. There wasn't any difference in my lovely neighbor in my studio apartment. She loved smoking weed and playing her music real loud. So even on my days off, I didn't really get too much peace. And So to make a long story short, and this was the hood, I was miserable. This was a little piece of hell for me. But it was my circumstances. I left RN school and I was trying desperately to get into x-ray school. I was working and everything. And I was just so, I don't even know the word for it, but the living conditions were just so terrible. And I remember my parents never visited me. I'm trying to remember. I know my sister did, but my parents never did. They had moved out to Orange County, which is a nicer area. This is what I could afford. And I remember one day I was driving. It was on the better side of town. I was near Long Beach State College. They call it the traffic circle area. And I saw a sign. Now, mind you, my studio, I paid $575. Now, this is California money, not South money. So $575 for a studio apartment was good. It was great. But I was in the hood and it was dangerous. It was terrible. So I was driving near this area, and it's a nicer area. And there was a sign, and it said 1-bedroom apartment, $525, which was unheard of at that time for that area. A 1-bedroom apartment in that area could easily have run you $800-900. But this one said $520. I couldn't believe my eyes. So I jumped out and I put my name on the list and filled out the application and turned it in. Well, come to find out, I don't remember exactly because this is a bit vague, but I was 60 something on the list. Because so many people had, tried to get this apartment. But I found out it was a Christian organization. And they wanted to have affordable housing, but they wanted it for the right tenant. Well, the landlord called me, I think that Friday, and he told me, he was very kind. His name was Mr. Rents. And he said, well, they found someone, and, sorry, and, they found someone already. And when I tell you, I cried and cried because that was, how could I find an apartment cheaper that I was in a better area with a bedroom? And mind you, this 1-bedroom apartment, it had a parking spot, which means I could park right outside my building. I didn't have to park blocks away and walk. And it was to where in my studio, people could walk right up to my door and knock on the door. That's why I had all the previous drug dealers' clients. With this apartment, I don't want to say it was a buzz and gay. It was an old apartment, it was 1950s, I think. So there was a front door, and you had to ring the person's doorbell, and we'd have to come down and open. You couldn't buzz anyone in or anything. But that meant I was safe. And I was on the second floor. But when Mr. Rents called me and told me, sorry, the apartment's been taken, that weekend I cried. Me and the roaches. Me and all my roaches just cried and cried and cried. And I would have thought about things, but my neighbor was blasting the music so loud I couldn't even think. And I said, dear God. And at this point, I hadn't even gotten into x-ray school yet. But I think it was that Monday, I got a call from Mr. Rents. Now, mind you, at this point, life had been just hard. I had been just struggling to make it because all of my parents, they're upper middle class. My dad was a police officer. My mom, she was higher up in the restaurant business, but we just didn't grow up like that. Just once you turned 18, you're on your own. And so I just felt hopeless. I just jumped, got out of RN school. I was just like, there's no hope for me. But Mr. Rents called me and he said, you know what? That guy that we had, he fell through. He was some sort of investor, and so he was going to pay 6 months worth of rent. But this Christian group, they wanted a person to live in the unit because they wanted it to actually be a help. And so I was the next person, and everything cleared out, and I got the apartment. And I know y'all listening to this story, and I've been talking way too long, but I really don't care. I'm just going to tell my story because why not? So $525 per month. I got a 1-bedroom apartment. It had a heater, had a nice kitchen. It was, the front door was secure, so no one can just from the street could walk up to my apartment. I was on the second floor, and I had a parking spot, y'all. And this was a pretty decent. It was one of the nicer areas. And for the first time in my life, I really began to consider God, because the situation for me was so dire, and it didn't make any sense that I could be 60 something on a list and get this apartment from my miserable state that I was in. So that's when it began. I began to seek out and search. But let me tell you this now. I dropped out of RN school and I went straight into X-ray school. I didn't want to be an RN. I hated nursing. But in X-ray school, I graduated summa cum laude. I did really good. I really love X-ray. I love that field. But watch this, y'all. The top 5 students in the X-ray class, they got to work for Kaiser Permanente, a company that's based out of California. And if you did your externship at Kaiser, they paid you a stipend. Y'all, guess how much that stipend was? Before I tell you, one of the 5, she was a friend of mine at the time. Her father was an administrator for Kaiser, so she got a position even though she did not earn it with her grades. She got one position simply because of who her uncle was. So that left 4 positions, a class of 30-something kids. But I was number 1, and the stipend that they paid you, y'all, was $525, which was my rent. And while I was in school, I was in school 40 hours a week because we had clinicals in class one day, so it ended up being 40 hours a week. And then I waited tables in the evenings about 4 to 5 days a week to pay for my other expenses plus my stipend. So I was able to make it, y'all. So that's when my journey began to kind of discover God. And so I said, okay, so somebody created me and someone allowed this, so I need to figure out who it was. So, what are your options? You've got, the Eastern religions and Western religions. Eastern religions, you got Buddhism and Hinduism. And those, I looked into them, I did some research, and it was just not something that made sense. In Hinduism, there's like 1 million gods. I just couldn't get there. But what I noticed was with Christianity, the Muslim religion, and Judaism, they all stem from the Old Testament. So I said, I'll start there. And so I read the Old Testament, and eventually I read part of the Quran. I didn't read through the whole Quran. Make a long story short, after years and years of study, I said, you know what? I think Christianity is it. That's when I found the SDA church. And I was in SDA for many years and very active. I taught Sabbath school, taught Adventures, if you guys know what that is, children's church. I was very heavy in children's ministry. And amazingfacts.org is the website, that gave me so much Bible knowledge. And I credit all of my Bible knowledge and understanding to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and Amazing Facts. But the one thing that I was not able to get from the SDA church, and I was in there for a while, I never understood relationship. I never had a relationship with God. Never. I knew him cognitively, like I studied Christianity like you would study like history or science or anything else. I had all the data and facts and information, but no relationship and no love. Then cancer hits. They cut it out and it hits again and hits again. And then before you know it, it's spread all over and your doctor tells you have 3 to 6 months to live and you're 44 with 2 children. Well, I wasn't 44 at the time. I was a little bit younger. I'm 44 now. But anyway, it was overwhelming. So overwhelming for me that I decided that the best thing to do was to start a drinking problem. That makes sense, right? It was way too heavy for me. So I said, let's start drinking. And then when the 3 to 6 months thing came, and I was like, okay, I gotta really figure this out. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to die. What's gonna happen to me? It's heavy. And I don't have a relationship with this God that I've taught to people for years. I don't have my own personal relationship. I don't know who he is. People don't like me because of my stance and my views politically and my very conservative views. I'm excommunicated, so to speak, from my church because that's a whole nother story. Unfortunately, I have a big mouth, and when things aren't right, I call them out, and they didn't like that. And so, family and friends, I lost all these people because I came out supporting, a president that I believed would make our nation great again. I didn't realize how much people did not want to hear that. So, anyway, here we are. I have all this head knowledge, book knowledge about God, but no relationship and no way to figure out. And then, like God does in the nick of time, when you feel like there is no hope left, it's like he sends you a life raft. And just this past weekend, I met a couple of people. And as I speak this, they know who they are. And y'all have been my angels. And they introduced me and helped me to understand a relationship with God that I never had. One individual that I knew for years back from California, a former SDA, explained to me, you need to develop a relationship with God. You need to develop a relationship with God. And I would always say, how can I develop a relationship with a being that I cannot see, I cannot hear, I cannot touch, and I cannot feel? And I didn't have parents, even though they definitely took care of all my needs. I never went hungry or was never cold, always clothed and fed and everything. But the concept of love, I didn't understand that. I never got it. But then God sends another person, an angel, I believe, in the form of a black woman, which for the majority of my life has been my torment. Every black woman that I've crossed, and that's why sometimes I'm very hard on black women, has caused me great pain and misery. But our God is good, and so he sends me a black woman. And for the first time in my life, a woman began to speak life into me, and she began to speak hope. And this woman said to me, she said, I just saw her, and she said to me, she didn't say my name, but Red from Diaries, we'll say that. She said, Red from Diaries, she said, what if you gave one of your sons up for adoption? And then years later, when they're grown, they come back to you and their clothes are torn, they're dirty, they're missing limbs, they're just terrible and a mess. She said, what would you do? I would just embrace them. She says, that is how God sees you. Now, I have told that story in Bible study probably 100 times. And I always thought it was somebody else. But you know what she did? She related me to my child. Before, I always looked at my parents, and that's not how it was. You're on your own, sink or swim. Although they showed me so much love through their care for me, I just didn't grasp unconditional type love. It was just nothing that I understood. But I understood it for my children. It doesn't matter what they do in life, I'm going to always love them boys. There's nothing that they can do that's going to keep me from their love. And when she put it that way, it was like a light bulb just opened in my mind. Like, my God, is that how God sees me? Even though all the heinous sins, and I've said this many times on my channel, I don't know a woman more wicked than me, that God could still love even me, no matter what they say about me. And they say some bad things about me, y'all. They say terrible things about me. But could it be that God can love me the way I love my sons? How could I love my sons more than God loves me? And it just clicked, y'all. And I was like, wow. And she kept talking. She said more. Let me tell you what else she said. Well, I'll tell you what I said. And I'm in tears by this time. I'm in her living room. And I'm in tears. And the person that introduced me was a police officer. that I met that insisted for months and months that I talk to his mom. And I just kept saying, no, I'm scared to death of black women. She's poison, toxic. But he insisted and I came. So at this point, I say, I have so little faith. And that has been my struggle. My faith is so little. And you know what she said to me? She says, how much faith does the Bible say you need? And I said, a mustard seed. Because I used to put a mustard seed in a frame and kept it on my wall, and I used to give out mustard seeds to the children in Adventures Club. But I said, but I only have little faith. She goes, you know what that means? She said, that means that you have some faith. Even if you have a little, it means you have some. And then she told me all those years that you taught other people, you had faith and you believed that the word that you were teaching was true. And I said, yeah, because I poured a lot into those lessons. And she said, when you stood up, I think I've talked to about 3 or 4 different pastors in the SDA church and questioned, actually even outside of the SDA church, and they don't like that too much. And each time, I'll give the one that hurt the most was the man that did my father's eulogy. He told me never call him again because he was teaching the children about Black Lives Matter, a Marxist and racist group. And I asked him and I questioned him. I said, Pastor, how could you do this? A man that I loved for years, and he told me never contact him again. That's just one story, but several like that where they didn't want to hear what I had to say. So that hurt me to my core. But this woman told me that it took faith to stand up to those men because I believed the truth of what I was saying. And man, when I tell y'all my mind was blown, I never thought of it that way. I always thought it was a problem with me. And when I tell you family, church members, friends, at this point I have no one because I have a big mouth and I can't stop speaking the truth to my own detriment. And she said, because I do that, that means I have faith. And even though my faith is little, all we need is a mustard seed. And y'all, when I tell you, it's like the heavens opened up and everything became real to me. That I am worthy of God's love and his sacrifice of his son. It just never occurred to me. I always just thought it was for someone else because of my upbringing. In my upbringing, sorry guys, I was clear that I was a nothing and a nobody. It never occurred to me that I was worth a damn. And when she said that, I swear it was like thunder. I was like, God loves me too, and he's real. Because I'm not gonna lie, I put my study in now. But all those things I studied are true. So although as I speak to you right now, I have to take pain medicine because this cancer on the side of my chest, the doctor says it'll eventually burst through because my skin is very tight on that side. And so there's pain that I feel. But I know that this is just my earthly body. And I know I have a home to go to. And although my heart breaks for my little boys, that they're not going to have their mommy, and I'm not going to see my boys become men, let me tell y'all something. Yeah, that stings. It does. But I know that there is one that created the heavens and the earth, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. And he created me, and he knows me, and he calls me by my name. And in his word, he promises that in the end, after all of this pain and sorrow, because my boys are going to go through some pain. I know they are. When they don't have their mommy. And I've been through some pain in my life. I haven't even touched the surface. But what I know is in the end. Matter of fact, let's read it. Make sure I get it right. Hold on. I'm going to read what it say. This is Revelation chapter 21. I'm going to start at verse 4. Now, before I start, I got to keep talking. Somebody said, well, I don't believe the word of God. Well, I'll just say, walk yourself, baby step your way down like I did. You can't look at this creation and think that there was no creator. There's clearly a creator, okay? You don't know who he is yet, but you can't deny this creation. Study science and biology, and it's undeniable. There is clear design. Your next step is to find out which God is which and do your own study, do your own work. But the God that I discovered, he says this in Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. The one that created me and he created you, he says, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no sorrow nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Then he who sat on the throne said, behold, I make all things new. Those sounded like pleasant words before. Now they mean something, and some will say, well, hey, Red Femme Diaries, you're just saying that because you know you're coming to the end of your days and you need something to grasp hold to. Maybe so. But I know he sent me 2 people to help walk me through this process. I know there's clearly a God because I can see it in creation. I can't. You'd be a fool to doubt that. So if you're still doubting that, just click off the channel. But which God is it? This is the one and only God where you don't have to earn your salvation. Are you kidding me? I'm a wretch. There's no way I could work off or good the wrong that I've done. But we have one that shed his blood for us, a living sacrifice for our souls. And he sacrifices the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate Lamb of God. And although there's 6 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion of us now, there's been billions that have come through. And the same way we have trillions of cells in our body and they know how to work together to create that unique you. All the trillions of souls that have passed through this life, God is in control of those the same way our bodies can control the trillions of cells. We're all part of his body. There's a song like that too. And it just occurred to me that I'm part of that body too. And I'm blown away. So even though my sons and my family may go through some pain from my passing, like I went through pain with my father's passing, I know in that the end there will be no more death. We'll never have to go through this again. So that was, part of my testimony. I was long-winded again, but you know how I do, y'all. I just needed to just get that out. I've never told that story, and like I said, that was just my introduction to the idea of God, you know what I mean? But there was so much more learning and growth to do after that. In this time that I have left, I don't know exactly what my time will be, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not necessarily comfortable right now, but there's a peace that I don't think I've ever had before, because now I know for 100% sure that I'm going home. And I couldn't say that before, but I know I'm going home and I'm going to see my father. So, when I begin to tell my family and friends, I'm going to, let them know, don't warn me, mourn yourselves, because, troubles are definitely coming. And for whatever reason, God has chosen to take me out of that before, I see all that. But don't ever be sad for me. God's in control. We just have to put our faith and trust in him. He says that his yoke is not heavy, it's light. Put my yoke upon you. And so that's what I've decided to do. And so since I've done that, there's been a peace that surpasses all understanding. How can a person with aggressive cancer and, tearing through her chest and everything could have peace at a time like this? But I do, because I serve an amazing God. So, I don't know if I even kept one or two of you guys here, but doesn't matter. This is hopefully my boys. Hi, my pumpkin wumpkins. Hear that mommy's voice. So here we go. Please like this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel. This is Red Femme Diaries. Goodbye.